This week's episode was brought to you by Justin. If you enjoy listening to The Whole Rabbit and would like to help us keep making shows every week and hear all our extended ones too, you can listen to them for a mere $5 at www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where besides that, you also get a 5x5 vinyl bonus sticker of our Big Bazoomin cover art, a holographic Rabbit Clan sigil by Mari-sama, and access to our Discord server, which serves as a resource for practitioners of spagyrics and spaghetti-mancy. Go forth and eat a hot dog without a bun, for you are about to be initiated into the inner order of the Bavarian Illuminati and introduced to their most sacred text, the Principia Discordia, inside of which the true nature of reality is revealed, and seekers of truth may find their true family in a secret, esoteric order responsible for creating the body of Eris, the goddess of discord. If you've ever been curious about the true meaning of Ordo Ob Chaos, or just the secrets of life itself, this episode is for you, as it contains every single one of them. So without further ado, thank you, and enjoy the show. I believe there's hidden Discordian influence within certain video games and mythologies, but they like to remain hidden as such.
I mean, are we not going to talk about the character Discord from My Little Pony?
Oh, we're not going to talk about that? We're talking on Discord right now?
I know. I mean, it's all over the place.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just use telepathy to see which casino buffet food is safe, and which has been injected with psychic nanomachines you can only cure by smoking cigarettes and watching reruns of Small Wonder until you're able to infer its hidden meaning and reverse engineer the machines using your encyclopedic understanding of the show's deeper themes until the time induction loop has been reversed and the seven-dimensional parasites have chosen a new host. No! Prior to the supreme enlightenment, we partake of the holy hot dog in honor of the goddess Eris and the original snub, because this week we're discussing the Principia Discordia, the most esoteric book of all magic, mostly because nobody pays attention to it. I'm your host, Hacking Rabbit, Luke Madrid, and this week I'm joined once again by Mari-sama, the shadow handler in the Bahamas.
Oh wait, I wish I lived there. Why am I in the Bahamas?
Because that's a safe place to shadow handle people from.
Okay.
Like, if they find out who's directing all the gang stalking, they can't just, go to your house. They have to get on a boat or swim really well, and then try and track you down. But by then, your spy drone satellites have seen them coming, and you've relocated to another island in the Bahamas.
All right, whatever you say, bud.
Mari, would you please tell us about the philosophical function of what the Discordian Society is?
Sure. For centuries, men have probed the secrets of nature to discover and explain the laws of the universe, to find out the shape and the source of order. Today, that search is ending. It used to be the function of religion to provide explanations for the order of things which science discovered but was unable to explain. Today, that function is vestigial. So interested have men been with order throughout history that they left another field entirely neglected: disorder. Science is unable to explain, for example, why today's world goes right on ignoring science, paying more tribute to superstition, totalitarianism, and war. Why are the secrets of the atom used to promote chaos among men? Why are the most generous motives of men played upon to produce slavery? Why do otherwise sane people attend church on Sunday? I've asked myself this a lot. The purpose of the Discordian Society is to provide false, comforting answers to questions of this sort, to give mystical reasons for the disorder around us, to promote unworkable principles of discord. In short, to provide the world with a workshop for the insane, thus keeping them out of mischief as presidents, ambassadors, priests, ministers, and other dictators.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I'm really viewing this whole thing as a critique on hierarchy and a centralized standard of knowledge. You know what I mean?
No, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes.
Exactly. It's both. Not only is this, I mean, it's basically an entire sect of magic So obviously it has some kind of order or hierarchy, but it's saying also that these are all to console us, like they don't really exist.
Where else could we turn besides the holy Pentabarf, which was discovered by the hermit Apostle Zarathud in the 5th year of the Caterpillar? He found them carved in gilded stone while building a sun deck for his cave, but their import was lost. They were within a mysterious cipher. However, after 10 weeks and 11 hours of intensive scrutiny, he discerned that the message could be read by standing on his head and viewing it upside down. Know ye this, O man of faith? 1. There is no goddess but goddess, and she is your goddess. There is no Erisian movement but the Erisian movement, and it is the Erisian movement. And every golden apple core is the beloved home of a golden worm. 2.
Hey, wait. Side note, I have to tell the viewers, he wrote golden apple core as in corpse. Like
it's corpse.
The Army Corps, like the Army Corps, as if it's a military group. I just thought that was really clever.
I have transgressified against the way. 2. A Discordian shall always use the official Discordian document numbering system. 3. A Discordian is required during his early illumination to go off alone and partake joyously of a hot dog on a Friday. This devotive ceremony to remonstrate against the popular paganisms of the day, of Catholic Christendom, no meat on Friday, of Judaism, no meat of pork, of Hindic peoples, no meat of beef, of Buddhists, no meat of animal, and of Discordians,
no hot dog buns.
4. A Discordian shall partake of no hot dog buns, for such was the solace of our goddess when she was confronted with the original snub. 5. A Discordian is prohibited of believing what he reads. It is so written, so it be. Hail Discordia! Prosecutors will be transgressicuted.
I love this so much. Never believe anything you read and then or hear, for that matter.
Unless you have to, then do.
Yeah, but you can change your mind later.
The Principia Discordia was written under inspiration by Malocalypse The Younger, H.C. Omnibenevolent Polyfather of Virginity and Gold and High Priest of the Heretic Fringe and Protestant Persuasion in 1963, and first published using Jim Garrison, a Louisiana District Attorney's Xerox machine. His social security number was 566-524984, and spent much of his life working for Bank of America as a computer programmer where, according to Robert Anton Wilson, was serving as the head of a large computer facility at the time of the Principia Discordia's inception from the goddess Eris. According to Wikipedia, he is said to be the designer of one of early video games and was an author/editor of computer-oriented newsletters, and published an article proposing the use of computers to be used in transmitting signals to remotely control robots.
Literally a genius, a sub-genius, right?
You would use this technology from your secret base in the Bahamas so that if anyone got close to you, the robots would detect it first. It's all been designed by Malocalypse.
How do you know about all that?
He had to think of this stuff.
And I think he had a handler too.
Well, here's the thing.
Gregory Hill.
Malocalypse the Younger lives in his pituitary gland and really was only there for a short while to help write the Principia Discordia. And then Malocalypse sort of checked out.
Wait a second. So there's something possessing him that helped him write it.
Yes, Malocalypse 2, Mal 2, the Younger.
So, yeah, and then you hear a lot in New Age, people will start to channel, not deities, but, you know, you can channel like a ghost if you're doing a reading or something, an entity or a god. So your body becomes open and you can receive signal from another being.
Robert Anton Wilson was into it is because he had a channeled experience and spent a few years trying to figure out what it was he was channeling and eventually just decided it was the puka.
Crowley had that too. When he was in Egypt, he actually channeled something down. So this is common.
Well, he made a whole religion out of it.
So I just think that's cool that he's channeling something. The original person did.
Gregory Hill.
Okay.
In fact, he wasn't even identified as being the real Malocalypse the Younger until one of the official first editions was found in the library of the JFK assassination, like in the archives under his name.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this was almost a secret writing for him for a while.
Yeah, he worked at a bank. He worked at Bank of America. He was the head of a big computer division.
For some reason, he used a district attorney Xerox machine and stationery to Xerox this. And then he included the social security number, which I'm like, whose social security number is that? Is that the guy's Xerox machine who owns the Xerox machine? Or is that the guy? Like, I love how he includes all this. Okay, because they include
No,
all
I
this
just found that.
information
No, I just found that.
because that's like arbitrary. Nobody really cares about that.
Nobody really cares about that.
Well, I do.
At the same time, I guess he was friends with this guy, Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst. He's also credited with writing the Principia Discordia, but most importantly is known for discovering the Law of Fives, which is also included, like you'll see a pentagon throughout their symbolism. So he states with this symbol that all things can be divided into 5 parts or are divisible by 5. And he introduces one of the 2 primal forces sacred to Discordianism. Lord Ravenhurst was born Carrie Wendell Thornley, and in early 59 served with Lee Harvey Oswald in the same radar operator at MCAS El Toro in Santa Ana, California. Both men were said to share an interest in society, culture, literature, politics, and making much discussion of George Orwell's infamous 1984 and the philosophy of Marxism, which is said to have had made Oswald fully erect. Okay, so he would be an Antifa. And
Well, Oswald would be.
Oswald.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I read this wrong.
He was friends with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, okay, because I thought that Omar was really into socialism, but he was saying that Orwell was. Okay. Or Oswald was.
Yeah, him and Oswald would talk about George Orwell in 1984. Okay. But
right.
Oswald
but not
was a
Oswald
Marxist.
was the commie. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. And then wait, Oswald was Oswald also known as Ho Chi Zen?
No, Oswald shot JFK. The Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst is also known as Ho Chi Zen.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I didn't know he was known as that. Okay. So Omar was also known in the Discordian sect as Ho Chi Zen, the Grand Ballyhoo of Egypt of the Orthodox Discordian Society, president of the Fair Play for Switzerland Committee, and, quote, I further declare that there is no truth whatsoever to the charge that Carrie Wendell Thornley is a fictitious identity created by the Warren Commission for its own mysterious purposes. Source, volume 11. Wait, is that 9? No, that's 11.
Whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what that quote means, but I guess that's an inside joke that.
No, that's one of his names.
That's that's a whole sentence for a name.
Yeah, but that's his name. The Sacred Chao is the Discordian emblem and implements both the golden apple and the pentagon into opposing sides of a yin-yang referred to as the Hodge and the Podge. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, as opposed to male and female. The apple side refers to the Eristic principle, complementary to the Aristech principle. The Eristic principle of the universe represents undifferentiated, pure, bald discord in its unadulterated state. The Eristic principle is symbolized by the golden apple bearing the inscription Callisti, and refers to the only extant myth of the Greek goddess of strife and discord, whose name the Romans turned into Eris.
So the other principle represented by the pentagon in the hodgepodge, or the yin-yang as other people would say, the Aristique principle. As such, the pentagon refers to the Aristique of the universe, symbolized in the Discordian Society's emblem, the Sacred Chao.
It's cow, you got it right.
Is it cow? Okay.
It is cow.
Oh, that's why cow is holy. Okay, I get it. Cool.
Moo.
As a pentagon representing the idea essentially that everything that claims to be ordered is in fact only superficially ordered and imperfectly at that. This pentagon not only refers to geometry, but the United States military headquarters, which is stated to be a perfect example of superficial order resting on a solid foundation of chaos. Wow.
So you have chaos and unrecognized chaos appearing as order.
Can I read? Okay.
Those are the two forces. Yeah.
So if you look at the cow, the whole the pentagon in it is like off kilter, and I'm sure people are thinking like, oh, I mean, it's probably just how they pasted it in there, but no, there's a reason that it's turned at it's almost like a 30-degree angle, right?
Right.
The reason they chose to turn it on its side like that, a strange thing about the pentagram is it could be used for mystifying good or evil, capital, in white magic, as it was used with the point ascending to show the soul element pointing towards heaven. If you turn the pentagram upside down, then it would point towards the earth, which would mean Satan. So you could use black magic that way. So in Discordianism, they always rendered the 1 point to the left and 2 points to the right, which results in 1.5 points up and 1.5 points down. And everybody is happy, particularly Eris.
The official colors of the Discordian Society are blue, red, green, chartreuse, puce, heliotrope, tutti frutti, green, vermilion, navy black, and yellow. However, we usually render the emblem as silver bordered with golden pentagon and apple, all on a black or darkened background because it sort of looks pretty.
It looks good, dude. So there's different movements of Discordianism, and apparently there's 3 types of different Discordians.
Yes.
So the first one is Aristequians, which sounds fun to me because I like horses.
Then there's the Aristics.
And then it looks like Aristics, almost like a heretic. And then the Aresians, like a Parisian, but Aresian.
So
what about the Aresian movement?
It's the only movement, and it represents the esoteric religious fold that is dedicated to true wisdom, which they and only they realize can be found in the Aresian mysteries. Consequently, it is the Aresian movement over which they are most concerned. Besides, nobody in the Aresians even knows about the others anyway. So you have to study the mysteries to find out anything in the first place.
Oh, wow. This is kind of funny. Do you think that that's sarcasm or that that's a real thing?
Well,
like, do you think he's referring to people in traditional studies that have actually understood the importance and the foundational principles of chaos in actual, other studies?
some people are offended that this stuff goes on, but there is some underlying wisdom that people it's been said that it's a joke posing as a religion when really it's a religion posing as a joke.
So the Aresians have been around and they probably don't even know about Discordianism. What does that tell you? These are people that understand chaos and how to study chaos and how to understand the patterns that they see in it. This is before Discordianism happened. He's basically what they're writing here is that there are people that followed this, I guess, technique long before it was even founded. That's what I get out of that, because there's a lot of old magical practices that deal with chaos.
We've heard of the phrase ordo ab chaos.
Right. But it goes both ways.
Out of chaos, order.
But you can get chaos or order out of chaos too.
Exactly. This is a main point of Discordianism.
And that's why I don't think it's really a joke, because even the subgenius could be like, oh well, it's kind of like an art project. I get that. And then there's other things like, has anybody ever heard of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is pretty much just
that's atheism, though.
It is, but it's a mockery of Christianity, but not in the way that Satanism is, because Satanism is also that, but they actually have laws and stuff. But the spaghetti monster is just religion's dumb, but I don't think Discordian is definitely not that. It's not a parody. It's not a parody. What this actually says is the Aresians, I think isn't that a name of people that were practicing it before it was founded?
Well, they're saying that there's essentially 3 types of Discordians, but only the esoteric group knows of the other 2, including the other 2, as if to suggest that the groups of the Aristequians and the Aristics don't really know that they are Aristequians or Aristics, and only Aresians know that they're Aresians. So it's maybe a funny way of saying that secret societies or groupthinks categorize people into different groups, and they may not even know that they belong to those groups.
Yeah, but it's also saying that somebody's going to have that thought process before you come up with it and put your stupid brand name on it.
Yeah,
I really love how it does this it does this circular logic that brings you back to the original point, and then you realize how stupid hierarchy is. It really deprograms you, and I love that about it. But chaos magic is a lot older than this, but this is definitely building upon it in a positive way. Because like I was saying, I grew up having the same humor and the same I appeal to these same crazy Discordian ideas, but I had no idea that there was a whole group of people that felt that same way. You start doing this before you know about the order. I think that's a lot. They're also trying to say that most people will start doing this before they understand it's a magical practice.
Well, there are some Discordians who don't know they're Discordians. Eris may have been one of them. What do we know about Eris? Very little. But On the sincere words of Malaclypse the Younger, for it is true, history does know very little of Eris Discordia, with modern scholarship adding very little to the sentiment reflected in the Principia. Eris is the romanticized version of the Latin Discordia, and she's either the daughter of Zeus and Hera, Nyx and Cerberus, or possibly just Nyx alone. Nobody's really sure, which Malaclypse points out is fitting considering her nature. According to Hesiod, in his 780 poem Works and Days, there are appropriately and inconveniently actually two incarnations of Eris. So, after all, there are not one kind of strife alone, but over the earth there are two. As the one, a man may praise her when he came to understand her, but the other is blameworthy, and they are wholly different in nature. For one fosters evil war and battle, being cruel. Her no man loves, but perforce, through the will of deathless gods, men pay harsh strife her honor due. But the other is the elder daughter of dark knight Nyx, and the son of Cronus, who sits above and dwells in the aether, set her in the root of the earth, and she is far kinder to men. She stirs up even the shiftless to toil, and man grows eager to work when he considers his neighbor, a rich man who hastens to plow and plant, and his house in good order, and neighbor vies with his neighbor, and he hurries after wealth. This strife is wholesome for men, and potter is angry with potter, and craftsman with craftsman, and beggar is jealous of beggar, and minstrel of minstrel. In short, Hesiod portrays her as what we might consider now the twin faces of capitalism: excitement, competition, and growth, whose shadow side is disorder, shortage, and war.
Yeah, and I love that Eris is a container for both polarities of dualism, and I'm going to get into this later, but Discordia actually is a tool to break dualistic thinking.
Book 4 of Homer's Iliad presumes her parents to be Zeus and Hera by way of relating her to Enyo, sister of Ares. Strife whose wrath is relentless, she is the sister and companion of murderous Eris, she who is only a little thing at first, but thereafter grows until she strides on the earth with her head striking heaven. She then hurls down bitterness equally between both sides as she walked through the onslaught, making men's pain heavier. She also has a son whom she named Strife. In regard to her complex genealogy, Malaclypse states, but all this is garbage aside. What we have is a nice little myth about her.
In regards to her complex genealogy, Malaclypse states...
It's Malaclypse.
Malaclypse.
Malocalypse.
Okay. Malaclypse states, but all this garbage aside, we have one nice little myth about her.
This, of course, refers to the forced wedding between Peleus and Thetis, future parents of Achilles, and their lavish banquet attended by all the gods, save for Eris, who had been ceremonially snubbed for her reputation of making trouble. For this, Eris Discordia responded by gifting a golden apple to the banquet bearing the inscription, Callisti, which means, to the fairest one, after which it is said she retired home to partake of a hot dog without delay. Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite began quarreling ruthlessly, pulling at each other's hair, ripping each other's clothes, moaning in anguish and triumph. Zeus watched for a minute, but as Malocalypse explains, finally, Zeus calmed things down and declared that an arbitrator must be selected, which was a reasonable suggestion, and all agreed. He sent them to a shepherd of Troy, whose name was Paris, because his mother had had a lot of gall and had married a Frenchman. But each of the sneaky goddesses tried to outwit the other by going to bribe Paris by themselves. Athena offered him heroic war victories. Hera offered him great wealth and state power. Aphrodite offered him the most beautiful woman on earth. Being a healthy young Trojan lad, Paris promptly accepted Aphrodite's bribe. She got the apple, and he got what he deserved. As she had promised, she maneuvered earthly happenings so that Paris could have Helen, the Helen of Troy, then living with her husband, Menelaus, king of Sparta. Anyway, everyone knows that the Trojan War followed when Sparta demanded their queen back, and that the Trojan War is said to be the first war among men, and so we suffer because of the original snub. And so, a Discordian is to partake of no hot dog buns. Do you believe that?
No, because you're supposed to eat them on Friday.
After you have attained the supreme enlightenment, that is.
No, it said initiates can do that as a fun, prayer exercise.
I'm pretty sure you have to attain the supreme enlightenment first. But, you know...
No, you don't. It said, but also don't believe anything you read.
Shall we read law of laws then?
That's
please,
why
please, Mari.
All laws are incorrect except for those which are correct. I mean, how do you not know that?
Number 2.
All incorrect laws are correct except for those which are not.
3.
All correct laws are incorrect inasmuch they are not correct, but correct inasmuch as they may be.
4.
All laws that may be correct are correct unless they are otherwise.
And 5.
There are always 5 laws.
Okay.
I love it.
Eresian is defined as one of or in regard to Eris. 2. In reference to the principle of discord. Specifically, the Eresian movement is dedicated to acknowledging Eris as the universal deity, to understanding the Eristic principle and the Eristique principle and their interrelationship, to understanding the significance of life and its relation to truth, to propagating Eresian religion and Eresian theology, and to just plain gaining wisdom. The disorganization of the Eresian movement is composed of 3 main parts. 1. The House of Apostles of Eris. 2. The Administry. And 3. The Legion of Dynamic Discord. So, starting with the beginning, the House of Apostles of Eris, we have the Golden Apple Corps. In short, the house is composed of episcoposes, who are considered the aristocracy of the Eresian movement, more or less can do whatever they want, answering only to the Apple Core itself, which is reserved for the 2 founders who are known as the holders of the Sacred Chao and are designated by HC, being placed after their names. The Golden Apple Corps is described as the supreme, absolute, dictatorial tip-top of the Eresian movement. It has the last word as answerable only to Eris herself. It holds a position somewhat similar to the, pardon the reference, papacy in the heathen Christianity of the Catholic variety.
Oh, I love how Christians are heathens in this. Next would be the office of the high priesthood. However, soon after the founding of the church, perhaps divinely ordained, there was a schism within the leadership, fracturing the Eurasian movement into 2. Malocalypse the Younger and Lord Omar, both operating under the inspiration of Eris, had come to 2 different opposing opinions about the nature of Eris and her nature as a goddess, or just a convenient name for a divine principle. So Lord Omar, the high priest of the Eurasian Orthodoxy, he maintains that Eris is in fact a real goddess, and that members of the sect never should use her name in vain, or presume other gods and goddesses ahead of her, so that she should be basically your divine sort. She's sacred, basically.
They can't even come close.
Lord Omar's right. Lord Omar views Eris as completely sacred and actually a goddess, like she has a form and that she should be respected.
Or if there is a goddess, it is her.
Correct. Any goddess would be probably a facet of Eris, and but you wouldn't call them by their other name. You would call them Eris, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, meanwhile, Malocalypse the Younger maintains the heretic fringe and Protestant persuasion of the Eurasian movement, which holds that she is not a real live goddess, but if there was a real live goddess, it would be she. Being a symbolic manifestation of the principle, which is what he calls her, she does not, he argues, always represent the appropriate specific, which means that sometimes fringe heretic and persuaded Protestant can say, "Hail Bacchus," or "Hail Saint Bocanon," or "Hail me," or something, if he feels that Eris is not the appropriate symbol under the circumstances of the moment. The liberal interpreters may take her name in vain on occasion, but do it sparingly and with kindness and positivity, and they will not do it in the presence of an Orthodox Eurasian. So they're kind of polite about how they use it. So if someone's having a baby or having triplets, you'd be like, "Oh, Eris," you could say that, but you wouldn't say it like, you wouldn't take it in vain. Like if you weren't really surprised, or you didn't really mean to bless somebody with a goddess's name, then you wouldn't say it. So you could still say it though. You could still say "Hail Eris," but it seems like Lord Omar even thought that was heresy. Like if you're just saying "Hail Eris" to your brother or whatever.
You have to really mean it.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to talk about becoming a high priest, really.
I mean, there is no way to become a high priest.
You have to
Only
know.
the high priests know how. Only the high priests know, and you can't ask them now, can you?
No, you can't ask.
So, but I guess one of the things that they do is they create works like
well, they compile truth.
Works.
Yes, the compilers of truth, esoteric, compiled truth, and other holy works, such as the Principia Discordia, done in the name of Eris. Typically, compilers of truth compile their own truth from compilers of other truths, which are properly sorted in the Eurasian archives.
So they're basically making more collages of information. So if you're good at writing down info, you could be a high priest.
Well, you have to know the Discordian numbering system to do that part.
I haven't learned that yet. I bet it's the alphabet backwards.
There's numbers. Thank you. that
But
refer
they're
to
not in
dates.
order.
They actually have they have many editions of their holy works and editions. And if you look, you can find different copies of them, and they're all ordered and numbered. That's all the job of the episcopos is. So if you're a legionnaire and want to join the house and become an episcopos, you need to have demonstrated a deep understanding of Discordianism, preferably by creating one of these holy works. That is the surest way to get in. But why would you want to? One privilege of an episcopos is the ability of giving himself titles such as Bull Goose of Limbo and Protector of Switzerland, which is Lord Omar's title, or Omnibenevolent Polyfather of Virginity and Gold, Malocalypse The Younger's title. Like your sacred name, your sacred title is a very personal and individual thing that should be chosen with care. Furthermore, he can also head departments of administry and title himself appropriately. He can officially usher in new legionnaire converts and ascend legionnaires to disciplehood and everything. Likewise, as an aristocrat in the House of Apostles of Eris, an episcopos should carry his honor with the appropriate dignity.
Cool. Just big boss.
This branch, the episcoposes, they lead the administry, and that facilitates the continuation of the church. It's led by different heads of each department, except for the secretariat, which has never been staffed and serves no real function.
It may not even exist at all.
Well, they do have a departments and projects section.
Yeah, and each of these departments do have a head.
Would you like to tell us about the University of Discord?
Well, apparently back then it was still in the planning stage.
It still is.
But when it's completed, we'll have a full catalog of courses with no place to teach them. And we were going to offer a Widower of Arts degree to all Discordians interested, which I just love that so much because I have a Bachelor of Arts and I kind of want a Widower of Arts now.
It seems that patriarchal did not have that.
Well, yeah, it did. And then, I mean, a widower is someone who died, had a husband. So it's like the death of the patriarchy.
Now, there's also Project Switzerland. It seems that Lord Omar had discovered that there was a secret plot to overthrow Switzerland, in which 11 small countries of Europe would confiscate the gold in Swiss banks, being a good-natured fellow at heart. Lord Omar offered the Discordian Society's treasury for the purposes of Switzerland to hide their gold for safekeeping. The consulate did not really answer them, but the Discordians are sure that the Swiss will eventually take them up on their offer.
Get them tendies.
For more information about this, you must read Book 1 of the Honest Book of Truth. The fourth pillar, our plan to liberate Switzerland, as it is so called.
Or you could just buy game stonks.
If you look closely, I couldn't find a section in my copy about the Legion of Discord, except that one might perhaps join it involuntarily, but recruiting 5 others, you become an evangelist, and by compiling truths, you might become a compiler of truths, and become, as such, a compiler of truth esoteric. And one may be afforded titles based on behaviors like being a skilled orator, for example. So you can get titles right away when you get into Discordianism. You're a legionnaire right from the beginning.
Yeah, and I don't think the initiates give themselves titles, but I feel like that
The episcoposes.
yeah, the episcoposes would impose a title on you according to what you do.
And they
it
can
would
make
be
you a disciple.
unique. But yeah, I feel like the titles would be unique to individual. You know what I'm saying?
Based on your ability, yes.
It's a hazing thing. And it's a bonding activity.
Well, some people are good at recruiting and speaking, so I would probably be an evangelist.
Yeah, but you get some cool title that like goes with your flair. Does that make sense?
I could
Like,
be
you
a
wouldn't just
demagogue
be-
of Bob.
Yeah, you could. What I'm saying is like not everyone is going to have the same title, even though you do the same thing. That's what I read out of this.
If you are a legionnaire and you want to gain a higher place in the Church of Discord, there is actually an outline guide of the hierarchy of arguments to use of potential converts for the benefit of disorganization of men in the field, or if you prefer, pasture, starting with the Socratic approach. And it should always be used to open the conversation upon the victim. That is what asking questions to start an argument is called. You approach the victim and simply ask, did you know that God is a girl and that her name is Eris, goddess of discord? If the victim says yes, then he's either lying or you've picked a fellow Discordian idiot. If he doesn't, then proceed to the blind assertion. This is where you say, well, she is a girl and her name is Eris. Then see if the victim appears to be convinced. If not, proceed
to the faith bit, and you say, but you must have faith. Faith is wonderful, etc. I feel sorry for you if you don't have faith. And then add the argument by fear. You know, Then you say, do you know what happens to those who don't believe in goddess? If the victim says no, don't tell him whatever you think happens to unbelievers. Just shake your head sadly and go to the first cause ploy, wherein you point to all the chaos around you and ask, well, who do you think made all this then, wise guy? If he says, nobody, just impersonal forces, then
You go on to argument by semantical gymnastics, wherein you say that he is right and those impersonal forces are a girl and that her name is Eris. If he still objects to your objectionable presence, then go to the figurative symbolism dodge, wherein you explain that all sophisticated people know that Eris is just a figurative symbol for discord, but that the Discordian religion is a magnificent work of art, portrait of chaos, so to speak. If Nyx, quietly draft him into the Ichabod College where he may flunk till his heart's stupid content.
Another inside joke I may not get, the Ichabod College.
Well, then let us turn to the myth of Ichabod. There was once a huge boulder perched precariously on the edge of a cliff. For hundreds of years, this boulder was there rocking and swaying, but always keeping its balance just perfectly. But one year, there happened to be a severe windstorm, severe enough, as it were, to topple the boulder from its majestic height and dash it to the bottom of the cliff far below. Needless to say, the boulder was smashed into many pieces. Where it hit, the ground was covered with a carpet of pebbles, some small and some large, but pebbles and more pebbles as far as you could walk in an hour. One day, after all this, a young man by the name of Ichabod happened upon the area. Being a fellow of keen mind and observational powers, naturally he was quite astounded to see so many stones scattered so closely on the ground. Now, Ichabod was very much interested in the nature of things and spent a whole afternoon looking at pebbles, measuring the size of the pebbles, feeling the weight of the pebbles, and just pondering about pebbles in general. He spent the night there, not wanting to lose this miraculous find, and awoke the next morning full of enthusiasm. He spent many days on this carpet of stones. Eventually, he noticed a very strange thing. There were 3 rather large stones on the carpet, and they formed a triangle, almost but not quite equilateral. He was amazed. Looking further, he found 4 very white stones, and they were arranged in a lopsided square. Then he saw, by disregarding one white stone and thinking that gray stone a foot over instead, it was a perfect square. And if you chose this stone and that stone and that one, and you have a pentagon as large as the triangle. And here, a small hexagon, and there a square partially inside of the hexagon, and a decagon and 2 triangles interlock, and a circle, and a smaller circle within a circle, and a triangle within that which has a red stone, a gray stone, and a white stone. Ichabod spent many hours finding designs that became more and more complicated as his powers of observation grew with practice. Then he began to log his designs in a large leather book. As he counted designs and described them, the pages began to fill as the sun continued to return. He had begun his second ledger when a friend came by. His friend was a poet, and also interested in the nature of things. "My friend," cried Ichabod, "come quickly! I have discovered the most wondrous thing in the universe!" The poet hurried over, quite anxious to see what it was. Ichabod showed him the carpet of stones, but the poet only laughed and said, "It's nothing but scattered rocks." "But look," said Ichabod, "this triangle, and that square, and that, and this, and that," and he proceeded to show his friend the harvest of his many days' study. When the poet saw the designs, he turned to the ledgers, and by the time he was finished with these, he too was overwhelmed. He began to write poetry about the marvelous designs, and as such, he wrote and contemplated. He became sure that the designs must mean something. Such order and beauty is too monumental to be senseless, and the designs there were, Ichabod had shown him that, so at least that much. The poet went back to the village and read his new poetry, and all who heard him went to the cliff to see firsthand the carpet of designs they had heard about in the poems, and all returned to the village to spread the word. Then enthusiasm grew. It developed a group of people who loved beauty and nature, all of whom went to live right at the design themselves. Together, they wanted to see every design there was. Some wrote ledgers about triangles, others about the circles, others concentrated on red-colored stones, and they happened to be the first to see designs spring from outside the carpet. They and some others saw designs everywhere they went. "How blind we have been," they said. The movement grew and grew, and all who could see the designs knew that they had been put there by a great force. TM. "Nothing but a great force," said the philosophers, "could create this immense beauty." "Yes," said the world, "nothing but God could create such magnificent magnificent order, nothing but a god. And that was the day God was born. And ever since then, all men have known him for his infinite power, and all men have loved him for his infinite wisdom.
There's just so much about this story that I need to unpack.
If you'd like to unpack it.
I will. Let me just check my notes real quick.
This, too, seems to be a rather hilariously grim interpretation of the golden section.
I don't, because it's freeing. And it also, there's just so much about this. What this is saying is God was born from a random array of pebbles on the ground from a smashed boulder that just so happened to fall off. You know, that's called chaos. That's chance, right?
It is pretty symbolic, too, yeah.
And then when a boulder smashes into a million pieces, what dictates the size of those pieces, except for the chaotic underlying order, right?
Yes.
With physics, you know, it determines, the forces all come together and determine what shape the pebbles are and what shard size and what color they are and where they fall.
And certainly there would be patterns and strange things to look at.
Right, but they all fall. It seems disorderly, but it's a part of a larger order that we can't understand. So to me, it's like this story could also be like an atheist would love this story, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're saying, okay, well, humans, you know how they always say like, oh, well, humans have pattern recognition, and not all, just because you see a pattern doesn't mean that it has a meaning to it, right? But what do atheists miss except that because we are able to discern patterns, why are we able to pick out patterns is because that we find information and or meaning in the pattern, right? We are deciding to see the pattern. That's the important distinction here. The pattern doesn't make us think that there's a God. The pattern that we pick out and we look at and we make art about and we celebrate, you know, as a natural force. Mm-hmm. And it's not order. It's complete disorder. Those rocks weren't put there for us to make art about, but the fact that we made like these ledgers that they made language, they made pictures and artwork and music and poetry about these random rocks that fell. Atheists would say, oh, well, they're just worshiping a pile of rocks. Like the pile of rocks has no meaning. But what this story is trying to say, it flips it around and it says there is meaning in the chaotic order of rocks because Ichabod found it and wrote it down, and it spreads, you know, he spread it to his friends, and then everybody starts appreciating this random shit on the ground. And that's what this whole thing is trying to say, is that chaos is chaos, and you can say it's meaningless and that it has no order and that therefore it has no value. But what you don't understand is that as a human being, when you are parsing the chaos and the information and you are finding patterns that you can actually build yourself on top of, like the Pentagon that he was talking about before, you are always building yourself on top of chaos. And the ability to build a raft like a Pentagon, an actual orderly thing to float around on chaos with, that is what God is our ability to pick out patterns, our ability to read into information further than, like, say, an animal. Like, have you ever stared at like the patterns on a floor or a ceiling and you see pictures in it and you know they're not real? Like, you know somebody didn't come and like put that picture in but you still see that image and you can still like, oh, I could paint that, or like I could make but what is a painting except an expression of a pattern that I saw and then I can communicate it to you? And that's what Ichabod was doing. Ichabod saw these patterns and then he spreads it to other people and they come up with their own interpretations. And to me, that's why the Discordian and like the way that they look at chaos is so much more wholesome than, say, an atheist. It's like, well, it just randomly fell that way. There's no meaning to that. It's like, yeah, but we always, like, any meaning that we ever have in our lives, we ascribe that meaning to something. The meaning doesn't come from somewhere else.
Those people, though, you just draft them into the Ichabod College where they study other people's perceptions of the fallen rock. And then you flunk them based on whether or not they answered the questions correctly.
Yeah, it's like, but you know what's really funny, Luke, though, is my dad was a physicist, right?
Yeah.
And he doubted the Niels Bohr model of the atom. You know how they built the atom smashers on that. Like, oh, subatomic particles. If we just ram atoms into each other, eventually we'll be able to count all the subatomic particles and understand what they're made of. But my dad actually told me this one time he said, this is like smashing rocks together and then sorting the shards of a rock and being like, okay, well, these are triangle shaped and then these are. So basically, my dad was telling me that modern science is basically Discordianism. Discordianism. They're just smashing shit together and they're sorting the shards and they're looking at the patterns and they're comparing it to other patterns that they've seen. And then they're like celebrating it like artwork.
Well,
And it may or may not be right. Like their observations are true, but it's not as close to the truth as I think that my dad was trying to say, is that there's something above just sorting shards of rock. Like that's not necessarily science, because that's what he was saying. He was saying like modern physics is basically like Discordianism, because they're just like, they don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And that's why this is also related to the Church of the Subgenius, because, you know, you could be like, maybe you're not a genius. Maybe you don't have high IQ, but there's something about randomness and chaos that brings about these like truths, these ultimate truths. You don't have to have order. You don't have to have hierarchy. You don't have to have a super genius IQ to understand this. Even my dad told me that like the brightest scientists of their time, they're just wasting their time. They're not really getting to the root of the truth. They're just smashing rocks together and looking at, you know, like any rock, you smash it together, it can make all sorts of different shards. So I just think that's really cool because it goes back and forth. Like this story goes one way and then it goes another. It says you shouldn't categorize things, but it also says that you should, and you should celebrate it. Like it's breaking duality, dude. This is so cool.
even in science, they tell us that everything came from, well, okay, you smash the particles together to simulate a higher energy state, which they presume was an earlier
Was the original
mode of the universe because everything was compacted, right?
and
so
plasma. It was all excited and it couldn't be complex. There was no environment for it to condense into like iron or something.
So
everything was like plasma, free-flowing electrons, free-flowing particles. And then the first atom that ever formed was hydrogen.
So we smashed those
simple.
together to create those conditions that we believe we originated from, which is chaos.
But it is chaos. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It can't not be true, but we all come from chaos, but we go to order and then we go back to chaos. Like it's a never ending cycle. And I really think the Discordians get this is like, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have like IQ. You don't have to have all this information and knowledge built up. You could tap into this instantly.
Well, what's funny, we like by just goofing off and being confused and looking up weird stuff, I discovered that for me, in my own personal, like with the whole rabbit, using the whole rabbit symbol as discovering that the rabbit is a symbol of arising out of the primordial chaos, right? Which was represented by Nuit or Nu, or actually nothingness in Chinese is Mu, which is what the Sacred Chao utters in Discordianism. And its ox is the 0 card for the tarot, so it actually kind of makes some sense.
And then, their 0 card is Nyx, which is apparently related to Eris. She's either her sister or mother.
And Nuit.
I like that.
The goddess of night, Nyx, Nuit.
Nyx, Nuit, nothing, void, right?
Yeah.
Chaos comes out of void.
And so the pulling a rabbit out of the hat, she is essentially the rabbit hole. That's what she is. Like I'm just riffing on symbolism that is just really old.
And we haven't even I don't know if we're going to talk about Eris anymore, but she also appears as a crone and a maiden. Like she has a dualistic look to her. If you really see, like one of her true forms is the crone, which is, she looks like a disfigured old woman that's ugly. And she has that golden apple. So that's where the Snow White witch comes from, probably.
Well, Robert Anton Wilson says that all women with a dagger in their breast appear ghastly and frightening.
Well, I didn't know she had a dagger in her breast, but... but she also appears as young and enticing, like a golden apple is like, that's a virtue. That's like virginity and virtue. And,
Which Disney movie stole that, like to the fairest?
Snow White.
And then which movie is it where they get in trouble by not inviting the bad guy to the...
Maleficent, the Sleeping Beauty. And then also they redid it with Frozen.
Okay, those 3 things are borrowing directly from the original snub. Mythology.
Yeah.
It's even referred to as a snub on Wikipedia in terms of academic authority.
That's why Maleficent has always been my and that's the thing is in Disney movies, it's always a fucking princess, right? And the only queen they give a movie to, she's evil. Maleficent is evil because they rejected her for being different. And this is the same. Frozen ripped this off, you guys. Sorry to tell you. Yeah, Maleficent was totally rejected because she was evil, right? And then she became a villain because of the way people treated her. See?
Well, this marriage banquet between Thetis and I can't remember the other name. It's a forced marriage. Zeus is making it happen.
But I love that she does the golden apple because she knows those bitches are going to fight over who's prettiest because she doesn't give a fuck. She shows up as a crone sometimes. That's how much she cares. And honestly, a lot of other people have talked about her being a trickster. She's like a trickster goddess, but you don't really hear about them that much. But she actually changes her form and does tricks like the golden apple. She sends the golden apple to the prettiest of them all, and all of the fucking goddesses of the banquet start fighting. And they didn't invite her because she's problematic. She's a problem child. She'll embarrass us. It's do you know how much I've felt that in my life? I totally understand how she feels. It's just because I don't act or dress or talk like you doesn't mean that I shouldn't be included.
Well,
you know?
This is esoteric feminism to some extent, because what did the mainstream religions do to the goddess? I mean, if all these goddesses emanate from Nuit, or this sky goddess that milks, that's fucking the wrong word.
Yum.
that offers milk, right, to the soul. Her milk is the light of the stars, and it nourishes the soul. It's the body of which all the ancestors go to be a part of when they die. And then it was such a part of Egyptian mythos that they didn't even write about it. It's the same thing where the word for rabbit means the word for being. Un just means being.
Life.
Yeah, it just means being, existence itself. And the idea of a sky goddess was so built into they didn't even talk about it. But then it comes to, the modern day and the patriarchal religions, which came to rise in the age of Taurus. The goddess is relegated to being this evil figure and this bad figure. And she's not invited to the party because she's going to mess it up, basically.
Yeah, because they would always portray in the yin yang that female is negative. This is a big problem that I had when I was a child, when I was younger, is I didn't get into magic or even religion because I was so upset that they portrayed my sex as the negative. But then if you look into it, you realize it's not negative as in you're a bad person because you have a vagina. That's not what that means.
No.
Negative means receptive. It means submissive. It means accepting, loving, encompassing. It also means terrifying, void, dark. There's things that are it's not that it's bad, it's not that it's negative. It's just that it's a different force than the positive force. So, and that's why I like this. I love Discordianism because they say it's the hodge and the podge. So they kind of distract you from that symbolism. And but now that I'm older, I understand how important it is. But what I'm saying is that just because they call it in the traditional esoteric practices, they call it male and female, doesn't mean that males and females can't exert those same principles, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Or,
yeah.
A female could exert mostly yin. She could be very masculine.
And even on the same day,
you could switch.
You could switch in one day.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm that way, and it's very confusing. But when they phrase it in this way, where it's there's two principles, it doesn't mean that if you're a female that you always are this way. That's not what it's saying.
Yeah, it's hodge and podge. You could be a little queer or a little lesbian. It doesn't have to. You don't have to have all these. You don't have to have all these weird diametrics. You could just a
little bit ace too. They allow room for everything. And I really like also at the beginning when they're never eat a hot dog on Friday to piss off all these pagan religions, including Discordianism. I like how they include them. I like how they include themselves. In the fire. When they're flaming people, they're okay. Well, also don't believe this, but
chaos is recursive. Okay.
Yeah, it'll contradict itself, but I think
all order appears on the surface of the void, just momentarily for a little while.
It looks like order, but it's probably not.
It's founded on chaos, which is the mother.
And it will dissolve into the mother eventually.
Yes.
And become something new, right?
So you might as well worship her.
Point. Right. That's the whole point, is you want to worship that process of change. You don't want to worship one stable thing. You want to worship something that changes.
Which is why you need to give Baphomet back her titties. If you're listening to this, Satanist, give Baphomet back her titties. You offend! You offend! Eris and Baphomet at the same time. Woe be upon you! You know, there's actually Discordian Satan. In Yold Zero, a malcontented hunchbrain by the name of Greyface got it into his head that the universe was a humorless place, as humorless as he, and began to teach that play was sinful because it contradicted the ways of serious order TM. Look at all the order around you, he said. And from that, he deluded most honest men to believe that reality was a straitjacketed affair and not the happy romance as men had once known it. It is not presently understood why men were so gullible at that particular time, for absolutely no one thought to observe all the disorder around them and conclude just the opposite. But anyway, Greyface and his followers took the game of playing life more seriously than they took life itself, and were known even to destroy other living beings whose ways of life differed from their own. The unfortunate result of this is that mankind has since been suffering from a psychological and spiritual imbalance. Imbalance causes frustration, and frustration causes fear, and fear makes a bad trip, and man has been on a bad trip for a very, 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 very long time now. It is called the Curse of Greyface.
Yeah, so I just pulled up a meme of the NPCs. If anybody knows what an NPC is, that's a Greyface.
This is pretty revelatory, even
it's
for
really
us.
Weird that it's like Greyface, and literally the NPC meme on 4chan it's a Wojak with a blank face, and he's colored gray. Like, that's the meme. Keck, like, all hail Keck. Can I take his name in vain?
Well, isn't Keck supposed to be a god of discord?
It's a chaos god from Egypt, and it also has a female counterpart that I forgot the name of, but they're both, like, the Keck is a frog, so then you get Pepe. So this is meme magic. So we should do a whole episode on meme magic, but it's a thing, and I think it has to do with Discordianism.
Sorry.
Literally, memes are that. Like, they're little nonsensical info bursts, right? Little packets of information. And also, it's supposed to be a joke. Like, a lot of it's really edgy, but it's supposed to bring you out of yourself and to make you laugh at yourself or laugh at the situation you're in. Like, Clown World is another meme. It's like, don't get blackpilled and give up on life. Let's laugh about it and have a good time and find things that mean something to us. Because that's what life is about.
Let's talk about the Curse of Greyface. To choose order over disorder or disorder over order is to accept a trip composed of both the creative and the destructive, but to choose the creative over the destructive is an all-creative trip composed of both order and disorder. To accomplish this, one need only accept creative disorder along with and equal to creative order, and also willing to reject destructive order as an undesirable equal to destructive disorder. The Curse of Greyface included the division of life into order and disorder as the essential positive-negative polarity, instead of building a game foundation with creative destructive as the essential positive-negative. He has thereby caused man to endure the destructive aspect of order and has prevented man from effectively participating in the creative uses of disorder. Civilization reflects this unfortunate division.
Interesting note, an orderly destruction would be like tearing down a building, right? Because the Pentagon is something of structure, but I see that destroying something disorderly would be like eating an apple, you know? Like, to tear down a building, if you make something that sucks, you need to tear it down, right? To start over again. You can't start over if you didn't tear it down. But if you have something like an apple and you're hungry and you need the energy, it's good to eat it, because you create more energy out of. See how a disorderly destruction is more creative than just destroying something that's orderly, right? You lose more energy by destroying something that's orderly than you do by destroying a disorderly thing.
Mushroom grows on the poo-poo.
Right. That's a refuse, right? But it creates something that we can gain a positive spiritual influence from. Or if you're fucking hungry, eat them.
Which makes more poo-poo.
Yes. So it's an endless cycle. And
It's
I
an
really
endless
love
cycle of poo-poo.
I really love that this doesn't get on one side or the other. And in that, I was watching South Park earlier, and that's what it reminds me of South Park, because they don't take either side, and that's why they're still relevant now, because they're not polarized.
The POEE, which is pronounced POEE, proclaims that other division is preferable, and we work towards the proposition that creative disorder, like creative order, is possible and desirable, and that destructive order, like destructive disorder, is unnecessary and undesirable. Seek the Sacred Chao. Therein you will find the foolishness of the order/disorder. They are of the same. The preceding deeply introspective explanation can be translated thusly: nobody likes a killjoy. Thank you, everybody. If you'd like to hear more about what we think about Discordianism and its offshoot, the Church of the Subgenius, you will have to visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where $5 gets you access to all our extended shows, 2 bonus stickers, and access to our own personal Discord server, which is fairly ordered strictly so that no entertaining or magical conversation might ever happen. So why would you want to go there?
To eat carrots and shoot lasers. Duh.